God of War came out in 2005, and to be honest, I never played it when it launched. And most likely you also didn't because you were probably too young or didn't own a PS2 yet. But what's certain, it changed everything about what a PlayStation exclusive could be. This wasn't just another action game. This was Sony saying, we can do mature, violent, cinematic experiences better than anyone.
And honestly, over the next 18 years, they proved it 9 times over.
God of War 2005. The origin of anger management issues.
God of War dropped in March 2005 and immediately made Devil May Cry look like a children's cartoon. David Jaffe in Santa Monica Studio created Kratos, a Spartan warrior so angry he made the Hulk look well-adjusted. The opening? Kratos literally commits suicide by jumping off a cliff. That's your hero introduction. Hi, I'm the protagonist. I'm gonna kill myself now. Nintendo would never. The story was Shakespeare if Shakespeare had a gym membership and daddy issues. Ares, the god of war, tricks Kratos into murdering his own wife and daughter. Their ashes get permanently fused to his skin, making him literally white with grief. Subtle? No. Effective? Absolutely. But here's what made it revolutionary. Those blades of chaos weren't just weapons. They were basically angry yo-yos that let you combo enemies across the entire screen. The fixed camera angles made every fight feel like a movie scene, and those quick-time events, pressing circle to gouge out a Cyclops' eye while the controller vibrated, was gaming's holy shit moment of 2005. The Hydra boss battle on the ship? Chef's kiss. You literally hammered its head onto a broken mast. The sex minigame that gave you experience points for button timing your way through ancient Greek intercourse? Sony's lawyers definitely had meetings about that one. And let's talk about that Pandora's box level design. You're inside a temple that's on the back of a titan who's been crawling through the desert for eternity. That's the kind of insane concept that only works in video games. The game ended with Kratos killing Ares using a bridge-sized sword and becoming the new god of war. It sold over 4.6 million copies and proved Sony could create M-rated blockbusters. Not bad for a game whose protagonist's entire vocabulary was different variations of screaming Ares. God of War 2, 2007, The Empire Strikes Back of Rage.
God of War 2 launched in March 2007 and was basically the PS2's middle finger to next-gen consoles. Everyone was buying PS3s and Xbox 360s, and Sony dropped their best exclusive on a console from 2000. Absolute mad lads. Cory Barlog took over directing, and his first decision? Let's have Zeus betray Kratos in the opening cutscene. Boom. You're mortal again. All that God of War status from the first game? Gone in 5 minutes. That's like starting Super Mario 2 by taking away Mario's ability to jump. The Colossus of Rhodes opening remains gaming's greatest, holy shit, we're really doing this moment. You're fighting a statue the size of a skyscraper while the entire city of Rhodes gets demolished around you. The sense of scale was unprecedented. This was on PS2 hardware that had less processing power than your current smart fridge. The Sisters of Fate section where you manipulated time? Genius. The Blade of Olympus that could kill gods? Perfect MacGuffin. Kratos literally changing his own destiny by killing the fates themselves? That's the kind of fuck you prophecy energy we needed. And that ending, Kratos going back in time to the moment Zeus betrayed him, stabbing him with his own sword, then rallying the Titans to attack Mount Olympus while riding on Gaia's back, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, check your pulse. The game pushed the PS2 so hard that Sony engineers were genuinely concerned about console overheating. Metacritic score, 93. It proved that raw horsepower meant nothing if you didn't have the games to back it up.
God of War, Chains of Olympus, 2008, pocket-sized patricide. Chains of Olympus hit PSP in March 2008 and somehow didn't completely suck, which was basically a miracle. Ready at Dawn Studios got handed the impossible task. Make God of War work on a handheld with one analog stick. One stick. That's like asking someone to perform surgery with a spoon. But they actually pulled it off. Set during Kratos' decade of serving the gods, his community service for murder basically, the story was surprisingly emotional. The Elysian Fields section where Kratos reunites with his daughter Calliope, heartbreaking.
having to literally push her away, giving up paradise to save the world, that controller got a little misty, not gonna lie. But let's be honest about the PSP's limitations. The graphics looked like God of War 1.5, the combos were simplified, and playing on that tiny screen gave everyone hand cramps. Still, for a handheld game in 2008, this was black magic. It proved the franchise could work anywhere, even on Sony's weird PlayStation Portal predecessor that nobody asked for. God of War 3, 2010, The Genocide Simulator. God of War 3 exploded on the PS3 in March 2010 as Sony's technical showcase and Kratos' doctoral thesis in deicide. This game opened with you climbing Mount Olympus on Gaia's back while fighting Poseidon. The scale was so massive that my brain couldn't process what was happening. Then you gouged out Poseidon's eyes. In first person. The game literally made you see what it's like to have Kratos murder you. That's commitment to the bit. The kill list in this game reads like a Greek mythology who's who. Poseidon, eyes gouged out, neck snapped. Hades, soul ripped out. Helios, head torn off, became a lantern. Hermes, legs amputated. Hercules, face beaten into pudding. Hera, neck snapped while drunk. Zeus, punched to death so brutally the screen went red. This wasn't a game. It was a Greek god extinction event. By the end, Kratos had literally destroyed civilization. The sun was gone. The seas were poisoned. Souls were escaping the underworld. Greece was basically experiencing all the plagues of Egypt simultaneously. But here's the genius part. Pandora. This little girl who reminded Kratos of his daughter actually made him feel something other than rage. When she sacrificed herself and Kratos screamed, "Pandora!" That was actual character development. Then Kratos stabbed himself to release hope to humanity, which was symbolic as hell, but also left the franchise in a weird place. Where do you go after you've literally killed everyone? Technical achievement, 10 out of 10. Titans had individual polygons for their pores. Story conclusion, satisfying but problematic. This ended the Greek saga perfectly, but also wrote the franchise into a corner. God of War, Ghost of Sparta, 2010, the PSP game nobody played but should have. Ghost of Sparta arrived on PSP in November 2010 and told the best God of War story that 90% of players never experienced. This game was about Kratos' brother Deimos, who I guarantee you forgot existed. The gods kidnapped him as a child because of a prophecy. Kratos assumed he was dead, got his red tattoo to honor him, then found out he was alive and imprisoned by Thanatos. The reunion scene where Deimos beats the shit out of Kratos for abandoning him? Perfect. Finally, someone called Kratos out for being a terrible family member. Then they reconciled just in time for Thanatos to murder Deimos anyway, because this is God of War and happiness is illegal. But let's be real. This released on PSP in 2010. The iPhone 4 had just come out. Nobody was carrying around a PSP anymore. This game was basically released directly into irrelevance, which sucks because it's genuinely great. The Scylla boss fight? Incredible. The journey through Atlantis? Gorgeous. But it might as well have been released on the Nintendo Virtual Boy for all the attention it got. God of War Ascension, 2013. The franchise killer. Ascension limped onto PS3 in March 2013 and was the "please stop" moment everyone saw coming. This was a prequel nobody asked for, with multiplayer nobody wanted. The story was about the Furies punishing Kratos for breaking his oath to Ares. If that sounds boring, that's because it was. The whole game felt like deleted scenes from better God of War games. They added multiplayer where you could pledge allegiance to different gods and fight other players. You know what God of War fans were clamoring for? Not multiplayer. Literally, nobody booted up God of War thinking, I hope I can teabag someone as a generic Spartan warrior. The combat innovation was adding different elements to the Blades of Chaos. Fire, ice, lightning, soul. That's not innovation. That's a Pokemon-type chart. They removed alternate weapons, simplified combos, and made the whole thing feel like God of War on autopilot. Sales dropped 50% from God of War 3. Reviews were the lowest in franchise history. The franchise fatigue was real. This was God of War's maybe we should take a break moment. And honestly, thank God it failed, because it forced Sony to completely reimagine everything. God of War 2018, the apology letter that won Game of the Year. God of War returned in April 2018 and pulled the greatest reinvention in gaming history. Kratos was in Norse mythology now with zero explanation. He had a son named Atreus, he had a beard that could house a family of birds, the blades of chaos were hidden under the floorboards like a recovering alcoholic's secret whiskey stash. This wasn't a sequel, it was a therapy session. The continuous camera shot with no cuts, ambitious as hell. The Leviathan axe that you could throw and recall like Thor's hammer? Perfect. Christopher Judge replacing T.C. Carson as Kratos' voice? Initially controversial, ultimately brilliant. That deeper, more weary voice sold the old man trying to change vibe. Boy became 2018's defining meme. Kratos couldn't say his son's name for half the game. That's not bad writing. That's showing emotional constipation through gameplay. The journey to spread Faye's ashes was really about Kratos learning to be a father. When he finally tells Atreus about his past, admits he's a god, and says, "I have nothing more to hide," grown men wept. The Baldur boss fights were incredible. This invulnerable god who couldn't feel anything was the perfect foil to Kratos, who felt too much. That opening fight where Baldur shows up at your door, no health bars, no UI, just two gods beating the absolute hell out of each other while destroying the entire forest. The world serpent speaking a dead language, Mimir's talking head providing commentary, the revelation that Faye was a giant and Atreus is actually Loki. This game had more genuine surprises than the previous 6 games combined. 94 Metacritic, 23 million copies sold, Game of the Year everywhere. This proved you could completely abandon everything that made your franchise successful and somehow make something better. God of War Ragnarök, 2022. The therapy continues. Ragnarök launched in November 2022, trying to end the Norse saga in one game, which was ambitious and slightly insane. They crammed Fimbulwinter and Ragnarök into one title. Thor showed up looking like he discovered craft beer and depression simultaneously. Richard Schiff played Odin as a Mafia Don CEO rather than a typical God King. Inspired casting. Atreus' sections where you played as him? Divisive but necessary. The kid needed character development beyond, boy, read this. His struggle with the Loki identity, befriending Angerboda, trying to prevent Ragnarok, it all worked, even if players wanted more Kratos smashing. Brock's death hit different, because he couldn't go to the afterlife. In a game about gods and resurrection, making a death permanent? That's how you raise stakes. Sindri's grief and anger at Kratos felt earned. Finally, consequences that couldn't be fixed by punching harder. The ending where Kratos sees the prophecy of himself being worshipped as a hero, not feared as a monster? Character development 18 years in the making. He actually broke the cycle of violence, chose to be better, became the god of hope instead of war. Then the Valhalla DLC dropped as a free roguelike therapy session. Kratos literally confronting his past through gameplay, accepting young Kratos' rage, forgiving himself. That's not DLC, that's a psychological breakthrough you can platinum trophy. The Legacy. From toxic masculinity to tender moments. Looking back, God of War is the impossible franchise evolution. It went from being gaming's poster child for adolescent rage fantasies to a genuine exploration of masculinity, fatherhood, and redemption. The Greek games were pure id, anger, sex, violence, revenge. They were perfect for their time, but would be impossible to release today. The Norse games are superego, control, responsibility, growth, wisdom, same character, completely different human being. And honestly, both versions are valid. Sometimes you need cathartic rage. Sometimes you need contemplative growth. God of War gave us both and proved a franchise could grow up with its audience. The series sold over 70 million copies, defined 2 console generations, and showed that PlayStation exclusives, weren't just products, they were cultural moments. From QTE sex games to teaching your son about emotional vulnerability, this franchise has had one hell of a journey. And Kratos? He went from gaming's angriest character to gaming's best dad. That's not just character development, that's a fucking miracle. Current status, waiting for the next mythology. Egyptian, Celtic, Japanese, wherever Kratos goes next, we know one thing: boys coming with him.